Hello and welcome, What the Finances, to another episode of the What the Finance podcast, where we talk to experts to help gain a greater understanding about what is happening in the world of finance, investing, and markets. So, on today's podcast, I'm happy to welcome Alexander Stahel, who's the founder and chief investment officer of Switzerland-based commodity investment firm Burggraben Holding AG. Sorry, I probably didn't pronounce that very well, Alexander. But yeah, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. Very, very nice to have me, Anthony.
You're welcome. So my first question, there seems to be, I guess everyone's talking about energy markets, what's happening, unfortunately, in Europe as well as the UK. So I guess, can you give us a little bit of an outline about the landscape of electricity throughout Europe and the UK at the moment?
Yes, I can. It's a big question. Let me try and frame it somehow for your audience. So clearly at the moment, what everyone starts to notice is that the electricity prices shoot up in Europe. So what does that mean? Usually electricity prices, measured in euro for a change, should be, around 35 to 50 euro per megawatt hour. But at the moment, subject to which country and which electricity price we measure, so there is the peak and the base load price, they are as high as 1,700 euro per megawatt hour. So clearly something is going on in the electricity market, and there are many relevant things that we can discuss now. But in short, is that we are, like in other areas of energy, we are short electricity, and we can discuss more about that. But that's what's going on, and most of it. Politicians these days have a way to blame the war for everything. And so obviously people know, gas prices have gone up, and then most people know that some of the gas is used for the production of electricity. And therefore, if gas prices are high, then probably electricity prices go higher too. But we can discuss exactly how electricity is priced and how people should look at it, and what the relevance is in terms of higher gas prices. But that's just not the only thing that's going on. There is a lot more going on behind the scenes, why electricity prices do and behave the way they behave. And I'm happy to explain more about it.
Yeah, because I guess if you look at the European energy markets, it's very interconnected. So, I guess a lot of people have talked about Germany at the moment and how they've been impacted by not having access to as much Russian gas. But then there's this buying and selling of electricity across basically all borders, including the UK. So I'm not sure if you can talk more about that complicated web of how electricity is moved around the whole continent, and I guess how that's maybe impacted what's happening.
Yes. So the European grid is what we call a synchronous grid. I'm sure you find a better pronunciation for that. But it means that everything on the continent, from Ankara, Turkey, to as far to Spain and even northern Africa, is synchronized in one way and interconnected. So that's for one. Then for two, you have what we call the island, or I call it that, which is Great Britain and Ireland. Let's look at them as one entity. But they are also connected to the continent by way of exporting and importing electricity, although they are not synchronous with the continental grid. And then you have the Scandinavians, which is called the Nord Pool, which encompasses parts of Denmark. Parts of Denmark are also synchronous with the European grid. And then you have the Swedish, the Finnish, and the Norwegian grid that is connected and synchronous. And then you have the Baltic states that are also interconnected. And all of these, call it three grids, are, however, connected and doing imports and exports to each other. Now, the continental grid is by far the largest. It generates about 3,300 terawatt hours per year. That's a lot of electricity. The Americans, although not synchronous everywhere, right? The Californian grid is not connected to other parts of the US grid, but they are in total about 4,000. So that gives you a perspective. The synchronous grid of the continent is considered the largest in the world. And why is that important? Because electricity, few people understand that or have to know that, but I think it's important to understand it. It's a minute-by-minute business. So we cannot store electricity in the grid. That means the demand or the consumption of electricity and the generation of electricity has to be matched minute by minute. And that's quite a miraculous, call it technology wonder that has been built in order to match those two minute by minute. And if you don't do that, if you cannot match it minute by minute, an operator has to intervene and make sure that this actually happens all the time, because otherwise you destroy infrastructure. So either, if there is not enough generation, or if there is too much generation, or the other way on the consumption side, which, by the way, in the electricity world is called load. If there is a deviation to what is generated, you need to immediately correct it, or you're going to have infrastructure damage. The moment you have somewhere an infrastructure damage, it can have a domino effect everywhere where it's synchronous. And that's why, for instance, in 2006, I think we had the last large fallout in Europe, which affected for about 6 hours, 15 million households. And, you had damage from northern Germany to Spain and so far regions, and it quickly spread. So it's a very serious affair if that minute by minute doesn't work. So it's about timing electricity, but it's also about location. So while we can transport electricity through these high voltages cables, we can that's not as easy as people think. So when you generate, so this over the years, the grid has been built usually where, or the generation capacities, the assets that produce electricity have been built where the demand has occurred. So take Germany. There is a deep industrial cluster in the south. So that's where certain generation capacities over the years have been built up, since the Second World War to the modern days of 2022. And those are more or less in balance. So what people or what the industry needs and what the industry can produce in terms of electricity is more or less in balance. We'll get back to that because it's an important topic, because this green shift that everyone understands is going on, and where we try to what they call decarbonize the grid, get rid of CO2 emissions, means that we are going to change that. We are going to generate electricity in parts of a country or of Europe and have to bring it to other parts of Europe. And that means we need transportation. So it's also about location. So it's not just about the assets that produce electricity, it's also about the timing of it, and it's also about the location. So that's maybe just an introduction, and it all matters enormously for what we call a healthy grid, and we can dive deeper from it.
Would you say so that minute by minute market is why, I've seen in London, I can't remember when, but at one point, energy prices just shot up to a ridiculous amount. And I'm guessing that's happened throughout Europe at the moment, because at that point they didn't have enough energy. So they had to basically buy it for however much they had to pay. Is that sort of why that occurs? Because it's like that?
So electricity is a commodity, right? It comes in the form of an atom. It's not when you generate something with gas or with coal or with nuclear or with wind or with solar. At the end of the day, what you deliver is an atom. And that commodity has a pricing mechanism, and that is what we call the merit order system. So what's the merit order system? So you have thousands and thousands of assets that generate electricity, and usually what happens is that the entire price of electricity, that the wholesale price that people pay for it, is priced according to the last atom that we need and the cost of that atom. So if you have too much of it, then prices usually collapse, and the price of everything goes down that you generate. electricity with. And then if you have one atom too little, then that last atom you need but you don't have is pricing all other atoms. And in this case, it's the gas that we didn't have and that we needed, and the gas price was high, and then you electrify that gas, and then that price of an atom was very high and priced the entire grid. And maybe we take a step back and look at what you could, before we're asking. I mean, there is obviously a lot of trading going on between the three grids. Now, traditionally in that trading, it was Germany and France who had excess electricity and exported a lot of electricity to other countries. Now, everyone was trading, you know, on the margin with everyone for different reasons. And there is this element of peak and base load where you help each other in a certain moment where you don't have let's say Italy has excess electricity in the north, and Monaco in France has a little bit too little, and there is, you know, call it over New Year, there is a bit of help from Italy flowing to France. But if you look at it on an annual basis, then Italy was a huge importer of electricity from France and from Germany. Okay, so there are trading patterns, and the large exporters were France and Germany, and the large importers in Europe are, for instance, certainly Italy, by far the largest, and then Austria is a large importer, doesn't have enough generation capacity for its demand, and then Hungary is another example of someone who needs to import every year a lot of electricity. All others, sometimes, you know, they import, sometimes they export, and it depends a lot on weather. Because the colder it gets in the winter, the more electricity you need. So sometimes you need help, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have excess. Okay, so here comes the thing. Over the past 18 to 24 months, France's nuclear fleet, everyone knows that France is a large nuclear energy producer, so it doesn't use gas, it doesn't use a lot of coal, or almost none. That nuclear fleet has been poorly maintained by EDF, and therefore the generation capacity of the nuclear fleet has gone down and down and down. And as the problems have become more severe because of a corrosion problem this year, there was unexpected prices out of France, which is call it a price maker for all of Europe, like Germany, because of its export capacity exploded. And that was the main reason. So now we're having two things that matter here. We have the gas price, call it higher gas price from war, where a lot of countries need a lot of gas to do electrification, to produce electricity. And then we have France and the nuclear fleet that doesn't produce what it's supposed to produce, but it doesn't just stop in France. We can get back to that. By the way, the EDF is also running the nuclear fleet in England, which is also not producing up to standards. And then in Belgium too. And so suddenly you have a nuclear electricity generation problem too in Europe. So you have the two that matter, as always in a perfect storm, that now come together. And then there is an element which I call is weather influenced. So why does weather matter? Because wind, the output of wind is influenced by weather, obviously. The output of solar, everyone knows, is influenced by weather. So is there more or less sun, and at night there is no solar. But not just that, then we have a lot of hydro production, and that's also influenced by weather. And so what happened this summer? We had a heat wave. And so now we are getting to a total generation capacity of different asset classes, call them. So nuclear, coal, gas, and then you have you know, the renewables, call them hydro, wind, and solar, and then we have some others, but let's leave them aside and call them others. And suddenly all the main generation capacities don't deliver up to standard. And so now you have what I call a perfect storm in electricity that Europe suffers from, and that where the war is just one element. Now, the war will always matter while it's going on and while gas prices are high, because the overall generation capacity in Europe that uses gas to create electricity, and I can give you the number exactly, is 23%. So we have about 180 gigawatt installed gas plants that do electricity, and those have a capacity of 23% for the entire European grid. So gas in the merit order will always matter, right? It's very hard to get rid of 20% of your generation capacity and just, kind of shift it out of the merit order and say, well, we have all these other assets that can produce, so we don't use gas. No, we will always need to use gas, and if gas prices are high, it will always matter for the price of electricity too. But it's just not that alone, right? It's also this inability of nuclear in France, in England, and in Belgium to deliver up to standards. Say you have a nuclear plant that is supposed to deliver 1 gigawatt. What does that mean? That means it has to deliver 1 gigawatt in an hour. Okay, so now for the year, that means you make the 1 gigawatt times 24 for the day, times 365. And then you have a time where that plant needs maintenance, needs refilling, needs this, needs that, whatever regular maintenance there is to make sure that the plant is going to run for 60 years and not just 10. So there is what we call a capacity factor, and that should be for a nuclear plant globally about 88%. Now the Germans run those nukes at about 94%. So they are the best in the world. By the way, we shut them down now by the end of the year, which is complete insanity. And then you have some that are not so well run. They are, say, at 86%. Right? I don't mention them in Europe. But in France, at the moment, we're running at 60% or below that, 58%. That's how bad it is. And so that cannot go unnoticed by electricity prices because it's such a large generation capacity of the overall grid. Let me give you a number there. 500 terawatt is what terawatt hours is what France consumes per year. And of that, the nuclear plant, the nuclear fleet alone should be able to produce about 450 of it. And at the moment, EDF guides for next year not even to produce 330. So that in fact, the range is 300 to 330 terawatt hours. And so if you take the midpoint, that gives you a capacity utilization of below 60%. And that's a huge concern for the market.
Yeah, and I think they've downgraded a lot of their estimates as well over the past few years, haven't they? So do you think there could be a potential that they might not even be able to produce that potentially?
Yeah. Now, I hope, look, there is what I call a bit of a crisis of confidence when it comes to nuclear, because over the last 20 years, somehow everyone thinks that, there is a public conversation. I don't think everyone thinks at all. I think there is a few that set the agenda, and certainly in the Germanic part of Europe, but also in, I would say, the Nordic part of Europe, and to some extent also in the French part of Europe and in the Italian part that has gone on for even longer, where nuclear is considered a high-risk technology. Now, nuclear is not without risk, but it's not that we are not have proven to be very good in handling those risks and to be very careful about it. Now, the Green Party, for instance, in Germany, however, went a step further and said, look, we are the party that is anti-nuclear war, which for me is completely fine. That's a great thing to be. But it's also then they took it further and said, look, we are the party that is also anti-nuclear electricity. And that's how they started, call it 35 years ago in Germany. And that's their reason being, la raison d'être. That's what they want. They want to get rid of nuclear. And that's what they've now preached in Germany in a very systematic way for 35 years. Now you'd say, okay, so what, right? it's not that many people. In fact, the Green Party members, right, those that define themselves by being so, is 80,000 people on an 80 million population. But it just so happens that sometimes in the history of human beings, right, there are a few that set the agenda for a lot. And then, you know, they are suddenly gaining a bit of momentum in the political party landscape in Germany. And then, you know, other coalition members that need to maybe do fuzzy compromises. And that's exactly what Merkel did after Fukushima, where she thought, oh, let me make the right coalition here. She needed something from the Green, and the Green said, okay, I give you something, but you need to, you know, give me the nuclear. I want to get rid of it. And so Merkel, the Union Party member, right, the CDU member, actually decided to get rid of nuclear. And that was in post-Fukushima 2011. And so the Germans decided then to get rid of 20 gigawatt of installed nuclear capacity over a period of time, right? So that's over a period of exactly 10 years, in fact. So, and we are now getting exactly to that point where we have to shut down all the nuclear, but we haven't replaced them. So what happens in Germany alone, because of that one single decision, is that Germany more or less loses now year over year, but lost about 35% of its generation capacity and is now losing, call it the last 10%. At the moment, they produce about, or it's a bit less, it's about 7% they lose in nuclear capacity. And so some people may say, so what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that nuclear is, and now we come back to what I said originally, electricity is not just about the, you know, where it comes from, the asset, whether it's decarbonized or not decarbonized, which, by the way, nuclear is obviously decarbonized, right? It's the cleanest energy we know. But nuclear has other qualities that are hugely important for a secure grid. And that is the minute-by-minute aspect. So nuclear can deliver minute by minute. It's not weather dependent. Whether the sun shines or the wind blows or there is a heat wave or no heat wave, nuclear usually delivers. Now, in a heat wave, there can be arguments like we've seen this summer where they say we should use less of that water because of the fish temperatures that we want to keep stable and so on and so forth. But those are, you know, call it esoteric parts. It's not that the nuclear fleet cannot deliver at 50 degrees Celsius for 2 months. It can absolutely deliver the output it needs to. But here is the, so it's from a minute-by-minute perspective, from a timing perspective for electricity, it's hugely important, much more important than other sources of electricity, because so reliable. And then it's also from a location perspective, which I said location matters too, it's important. So for instance, at the moment, when those last nukes will be shut down in Germany, the Bavarian and the Baden-Württemberg era in Germany will lose a lot of generation capacity that at the moment we argue is actually not replaced in terms of, even if there would be all the wind that constantly blows and that doesn't have a downtime, it couldn't be delivered to these areas that need them. So we're going to have a lot of problems to come, which weren't properly thought through, and your audience may say, but Jesus, what he's saying is so basic. Well, I can tell you that this is exactly what's going on. And these are all the issues that are going on. And now we can talk about a lot more issues. There is not 2 or 3. The German Energiewende is one, but the French nuclear fleet is another. And then I can go on more or less about every country and tell you the issues there are. The point is, those are exactly the issues. And they are not dealt with. And yet we get rid of these nuclear plants. And so electricity prices will not calm down while everyone starts to realize, hey, we have a supply side problem. Completely man-made, but we have it.
So do you think we'll have enough supply for winter? I guess the whole of the Europe market.
No, I would say with a certainty of 75% is we're not. And the reason we're saying that is because we do these numbers. We do them by country by country. We can overlay them, and then we can even look at, so the continent will not have enough electricity for what it's needed. And there is the, call it the annual aspect of it, and then there is the minute by minute aspect. So minute by minute means in what we call peak load moments, right? When, say, everyone comes home at 6 o'clock at night and everyone turns on the lights at home and everyone starts to cook and there are what we call peak load moments. And those are, you know, it means like in a peak moment of the day, we use twice to sometimes even 4 times more electricity than we do in a low moment of electricity. Say at 3 o'clock at night, we use very little electricity. So the differences are massive, right? And yet the grid has to be matched every minute. The generation capacity has to be there. So from a peak load aspect, we'll struggle. Because so far Germany, what it did is with all this new renewable capacity, it brought online over the last 20 years of Energiewende. You know, Germany is in the 20th year of Energiewende, not in the 3rd or 4th year. And the European climate laws came in June 2021. So that's all new and no one really even started. But the Germans are in year 20. Well advanced, having all the problems for the world to see about that Energiewende right now in front of our eyes. So we can learn there what works and what doesn't. And then, so the Germans, what they did so far is when they had a peak load problem that they couldn't cover because the wind wouldn't blow or the solar, it was dark at night and so solar doesn't produce, is that they would import the electricity from France. And then they had, for the year, they still had excess electricity. So they would generate more than they need for the whole year. But in a peak load moment, they lacked electricity. And that problem will become more severe when they shut down the nuclear plants. In fact, so severe that some argue a blackout is very highly likely. We'll get back to that because that's a very sensitive topic and I want to make sure that I explain it well to your audience. And then we have the rest of Europe, which all of them have their own problems, but the key player in the European landscape is now France having their own problems. And France was the one island that had excess electricity for everyone to provide in exactly the form they needed because it was so much nuclear, right? It's this much more powerful electricity because it's nuclear, because it can fit not just what it put, the electricity it produces, it can fit the minute by minute bill, so the timing of it and the location of it, right? So that is struggling at the moment. And so if you have now the two powerhouses, France and Germany, when it comes to electricity, one has the problem of an Energiewende, more renewables that doesn't fit the bill anymore of when they need the power and they cannot match electricity minute by minute. And the other one is struggling as a whole because they have their own crisis of confidence when it comes to nuclear production. The combination doesn't bode well for Europe. And that's where we go in now. So how did the continent, the synchronized grid of the continent get or will get the electricity from it doesn't have? At the moment, some was coming out of the UK, but the UK has its own challenges and is not a reliable exporter for Europe to import electricity from. Absolutely will not be. And then two, it's the Nordics. And the Nordics have a lot of hydro, and in that sense, of mainly Norway, but also Sweden, are a reliable exporter, except, and here comes the perfect storm again, not this time. Why? Though we can measure the Nordics in terms of water levels, of their giant water reservoirs that provided electricity, and those water levels for two main regions out of 5 main regions are, call it, at the lowest end over the last 20 years than they were. So now, as a whole, it's not a drama, certainly not for Norway. Norway is fine. But can Norway really export electricity come January, February? The minister doesn't know. He gave out a warning and said we may have to curtail electricity exports into the continent. And if that is going to be true, then for sure we have electricity shortages. So now what does that mean? That means we have to save electricity as we have to save gas. And I think this is what is going to happen this winter to Europe, where Europe, certainly in peak load moments, have to save electricity. And France already prepares for that, where everyone then has a little application here from the utility, which says, by the way, it's now 6 o'clock. Please make sure you don't use your oven, your iPhone, your, all different devices that you possibly, you can only use this and this and this much. And you shouldn't turn on all the lights in the house at once and so on and so forth. And so that is already rolling out in France, and that obviously will come into Germany as well. And in Switzerland, you see all the warnings as well. In Austria, they go a step further because they are net imports, where they more or less are already widely informing the population, at least those that pay attention, about how to behave in a blackout in case that comes. Now, what's the difference of an electricity shortage and a blackout? They are two completely different things. So electricity shortages is awkward. We haven't had them in 50 years. Electricity is what I call the basics of the Maslow pyramid. It's like air. We think it, when we need it, it's there. Let's have it. So it will be a big, sentiment shift, a mental shift for people to get used to the fact that maybe we have to pay a little bit more attention to how we use electricity than when we never had to pay attention. So that's the one change. But it's just at the end of the day, call it a self-restriction, and we will find out, okay, this is awkward, but we can do it. Not the end of the world. A blackout is something completely different. A blackout is caused by the operator not being able to match consumption and generation in a specific moment. Remember, minute by minute. In that minute where an operator either had too much or too little generation, he needs to react. He wasn't able to, and we have many operators in Europe. In Germany alone, you have 4 operators. In some countries, you only have 1 for the grid and so on. But as a group combined, they all have to be synchronized and get it right together, except again for England and the Nordics. They are separate. But whatever happens in the continent and goes wrong can go wrong anywhere, minute by minute. And if that happens, the operator tries to fix it, it's called an incident. And those incidents need immediate addressing. And in a minute, you can imagine there is no thinking process. It's like a plane about to crash, right? Everything has to go according to, your standards that you learned. And if there is a wrong reaction, then you can have a blackout. Now, what's a blackout really mean? It means that it's over-regional. It's not just electricity down in Bavaria. No, it will go over-regional to Bavaria, maybe even all of Germany, even contain Switzerland. Switzerland will be down too, Austria will be down too, and so on. And so now what's the difficulty about that? People say, okay, so it's down, right? That's awkward, maybe down for 2 hours, 3 hours, 6 hours, how much? No, the problem is when it goes over-regional, the problem is to get it all back up. And the larger the blackout, the more difficult it is to get the grid back up together. And that's where no one knows exactly how that would work. There are obviously plans, there are operators explaining this and that, but at the end of the day, we haven't had it. So far, we were able to contain it. What we had in 2006 was a rather small affair, call it 15,000 households out of 550 million people, sorry, 50 million households out of 550 million households that are connected to the grid at the moment. So that's a rather small affair. And then we were able to get it back up in 6 hours. If it gets too big this time, and given we have changed so much in the generation capacities, it could get complicated. And if that's true, it may last for days. Now, What does that mean? And I don't want to sound dramatic here. I think this is useful for your audience to hear so they can mentally prepare themselves, because if they start to read and think about the blackout, I think that's half the preparation. You know, that you already made a big leap forward in terms of how you can handle it. But it means, or they say, if you are in a blackout for 14 days, a society has problems, right? I mean, there will be violence, there will be death, right? People die in hospital and so on and so forth. So we can go through them. But after 4 weeks, they say society is literally back in the Stone Age. So that's how much we depend on electricity. And that's why a blackout would be very awkward, where people need to make sure they have enough money at home, because obviously an ATM doesn't work, right? The water doesn't work because water needs electricity to flow. You cannot refill your tank because a gas station needs electricity to work. Everything we do in modern life needs electricity to work, everything. And that wouldn't be around at scale around us, and people need to prepare for that in having a bit of money at home in form of cash, because you cannot get to the ATM. You need to have water enough, because you cannot find water else how. You need to have food that you can cook that doesn't need electricity. And so you go through the list, and then you're actually quite well prepared, and then you can also help others, and then it's probably not going to be that awkward an experience. But this is something that is now in the cards, and we cannot deny it. I mean, the likely thing that we're going to see, I would say 95% likely, is we're going to have shortages in management by the operators trying to keep it all contained, but it's all good because we don't have enough electricity. But there is what I would say a 50% likelihood, and that sounds like extremely high, but it's absolutely where I stand, that we have a blackout either, you know, in the winter 23 or 24 or 25 or 26 in the coming years, while we haven't addressed anything of the shortages and the problems we have. And that's equally likely, or probable, I should say, in those time frames that it can happen in 23 or 24. And whether it happens or not will be a bit of coincidence. It will be weather luck. You know, if it's a very tough winter, then it's probably more likely. And if it's, you know, a very mild winter, it's less like, and so on. So you have to go through the probably, and it doesn't make much sense to explain more about it. It's just the complexity of the system is so high that an accident is very likely now, and the capacities and all the, you know, the requirements that we have to operators have become so complex by now that it's very likely that we have such an accident.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a good example, but I know Texas had issues with their grid and they were down for a few days. So I'm not sure if that's a minor example of, I guess, what could happen.
No, that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
California had them, and then, you know, some people say, oh, you know, I was in South Africa. I'm sure some of your audience maybe from South, you know, we have rolling blackout, not a big deal. Right? We have shortage, but remember, we are not a society that is used to these kind of actions, right? I mean, you know, we have different expectations about our daily lives. And that's why I think for us it will be awkward. And we have to get used to it first. And then hopefully fix the grid and everything that needs fixing in order to go back to what I call the old.
Yeah, it really scares me when you say this. You think there's a 50% chance, because that's very high in my opinion.
I should say again, for the continent, let's be very clear for your audience, for the continental synchronous gate, that's why I explained it in the beginning. Now for the UK, Ireland, I will probably weigh it a little differently, and there is much less complexity in there because it's the UK and the Ireland dealing with each other, and Ireland is a net importer, so it's mainly the UK, and you know, these operators are very capable too. And then the Nordics, I will completely exclude out of that equation, although they have issues too, but at the end of the day, they are net exporters. So I don't see issues coming for Sweden or for Norway for sure, or I'd be very surprised if there is an issue. That there has to be something completely different, right? Almost an accident or something. But I think on the continent, we have absolutely problems to solve. That we coming from the main two countries that just have issues that so far have been the net exports to so many others, and that is just not going to be the same equation.
Yeah, it's very scary to think about. So would you say that's the major risk, to have a blackout that lasts for a long period of time, and then, as you said, it has all these impacts on the rest of society? Or are there any other risks you see in, I guess, electricity markets throughout Europe?
Well, I mean, that's, I cannot stress enough, if we have a blackout, you're going to have a very awkward market period. Now, imagine many people will be completely unprepared for this. They thought this is something that happens in emerging markets, but not in Europe. And then it happens. Boom, in front of them. They are unprepared. They just don't know how to handle it. And they think it's a question of 2 hours, and it continues for days. Can you imagine how these people, once this blackout is solved and they have access to information and they can back to their mobile and they can talk to their loved ones and they can go back to their bank and so on, how people will change in behavior coming out of this?
Yeah, it's like COVID,
They
where they
haven't
all
been
ran,
able to access the money and so on, how that will change.
like COVID, where they all ran to the shops.
I mean, this will be a GDP event of unheard proportions for Europe if it happens. Now, again, when it happens, I don't say it has to absolutely then be worst case. But I'm just saying, this is something that can happen now. I think a blackout is a 50% likelihood, same probability depending on weather and so on over the next couple of years, because we are not addressing anything to improve anything. At some point, it has been too much for the operators to keep it all together. The accident happens. It's all a question of math, right? It's statistics, it's probabilities. It's just at some point it will happen. We can measure all the incidents. If people go on my Twitter profile, I have a long thread pinned to my profile. You can read all the numbers, the incidents. I explain it all. It's just a question of math. It will happen. The question is when and why and how bad. And then if it's really bad, it's a massive event for our economies. And if it's not, because it has huge ramifications, if a factory has to stand still for 5 days, and there will be massive domino effects on that basis. But just the behavior of the change of behavior with people in itself, I would say people cannot overestimate. It's going to be very awkward. My hope is that would be my ideal situation, right? Because I see all these problems and people not yet willing to address them, right? Where we cannot do nuclear because this is just too insecure, right? And we have to decarbonize and we have to do it all fast, and the storage is not there yet to make the wind and the solar work and so on. And it's all pinned on my tweet for people to read up about it carefully and slowly. So the ideal scenario for me would be where we have, call it a part of Germany or France or Switzerland or so on, experiencing that kind of blackout, but we fix it after 12 hours. Or call it 24 hours. Or maybe it has to be 36 hours for everyone to get serious about it. And then I think people will vote differently. Then they say, no, guys. Decarbonize, climate laws, that's all fine, but I don't want to have inflation from high electricity prices. Right? Electricity price is going to be 10 times higher than what they were last year. Decarbonize, all fine, figure it first out, get the technology ready, and then when we have it and prices are back at 50, then let's decarbonize. Let's not just decarbonize and we're all going to go bankrupt. I mean, the cure is killing the patient. That cannot be like, because we're worried in 50 years about the climate. And I'm worried too, but let's do it in a scientific way and not in some sort of absurd way here, right? So, okay, let's fix it first and get rid of what I call greenflation, right? Where we have, then let's stop villainizing nuclear, while we don't have different optionalities, because nuclear has this high energy density and cannot be replaced by anything else. It's something I explain in my thread too. People need to read that carefully and take it very seriously. We cannot just say, it's risky. Well, how about building generation 3 or 4 capacities and make it even safer, right? I mean, they are already incredibly safe, but let's make it more safe. I'm all for it. By the way, it's going to be very cheap too. Regardless how safe we make it, it's going to be cheap if you make the unit cost over a 60-year period. And if you really make the cost, you see, it's unbeatable cheap, right? And then people say, yeah, but the insurance costs have to be, and no one can pay those. I say, so what are the insurance costs for a blackout? So we go renewable. Who pays the insurance cost of a blackout? What's that cost? Let's make it 1 times GDP for Europe, 22 trillion. Who is paying that bill? You see, people have to start to think these things to the end. At the moment, we were running in one direction and everyone was like, oh, this is actually not what I want. Well, life is a little bit more complicated sometimes. Sometimes we all have to kind of manage dilemmas and say, well, this is maybe not optimal. I'd like to a world without nuclear. Why not? If we can have, but the problem is we all love the electricity that we get each day, and we cannot replace it with anything else yet. Certainly not to do, remember, Anthony, what we need to do. It's not just the asset that we produce that has or doesn't have carbon, but to do the minute by minute, so the timing and the location of it. And we're just not there. We're not going to be there, not in 10 years, not in 15 years, and not in 30 years. This people can read up in my thing. Everyone of your audience is happy I'm happy for them to send me educated question, not some questions that they haven't thought about, but if they have a really educated question and see something and so, happy to answer it, because we have I think we have a lot of technical information about it, and we care about these things and we don't say them lightly. But at the moment, we have to accept that storage takes a long time to get there. We need chemical storage to bridge that. In Germany, you have a word, right? We can already, after 20 years of Energiewende, we can say a lot of absolute statements, right? We don't have to guess. So we know in Germany, in the winter time, and most of Europe has exactly the same climate conditions as Germany does. Switzerland has worse, right? Because we're a mountainous country. And then, some parts of Spain are different, right? But, they don't matter for the European setup. Okay. So we have what we call Dunkelflauten in Northern Europe. A Dunkelflaute means a dark period of no wind. And we can measure them. So what are they? If we measure them for the past 10 years, we know that more or less for about 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to have it once a year where we don't have wind, or almost none, and we don't have solar because it's just too dark, or almost none, even during the 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so we cannot just do solar and wind without being able to bridge those Dunkelflauten. How do you bridge them? By building for 2 weeks the storage, the chemical storage, not just the pumped storage, which we also don't have enough. So not the mechanical storage that Switzerland has plenty of, right? Amazing things that pump up the water when there is too much electricity, and then they can unleash it and so on. But that's what we call mechanical storage, and mechanical storage can relieve that energy over days. Again, we have a minute by minute grid. We cannot fix days when we need minute right now fixing, because we don't have nuclear left in Germany, and we don't have coal left, because that we need to get rid of that too. We need to decarbonize that too, and we need to get rid of that, and so on. And at the end of the day, we only have wind and solar and a bit of other renewables, wood, waste, biomass, right? And then how do we address that 14 days where we don't have the electricity? So we import it, right? From France, they cannot deliver it. At the moment, the electricity grid in Europe is not ready for a transition as advertised. Yet we move in that direction at quite some speed. while the storage solutions are not there, not hydrogen, not chemical storage, not the batteries, not the big batteries in the way we need them, either because they're not even ready, right? Australia just installed this big storage battery projects, Victoria, right? That Elon Musk with a lot of noise installed and so on, right? Where on the way to install it, it burned down once, right? The cell. That's not the kind of technology I'd like to use when it comes to electricity grids. Forgive me. Right? What I like is to treat the electricity grid like a plane. It needs to be an Airbus or Boeing that we know it will not fall from the sky. Because it's as important, if not more important, for our daily lives. At the moment, we treat the grid in Europe as if it's some startup project, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't work, you know what, it didn't work, so no problem, right? No. It has the risk of inflation, which no one will be able to afford, and your UK clients will know about that in detail for themselves exactly this winter. If I would have said the same story 12 months ago, there was what a guy with this Swiss accent even talking about that. Now everyone understands exactly what I mean. And two, we risk getting into a blackout. Sorry if I sound hopefully not emotional about it, but I just want to make sure people understand the importance of electricity for our daily lives and our entire societies, for freedom, for safety. This is not some startup experiment that we can do here. So I want policymakers immediately to stop this, where a few decided to decarbonize something in a tempo that we can all not match, that the technology is not in place, and that becomes an experiment when the grid needs to be treated with the utmost safety measures, where I would argue even the Boeing measures, the Airbus measures of producing a new plane, in my view, are not even high enough, right? We cannot have an accident once out of 5 million. We can just not have an accident because it is too important for the security and the safety of our societies. And that's how it has to be treated. And then I'm all for it. And whether that transition then takes 30 years or 500 years, I don't care. Because electricity is too important to kind of experiment around.
I agree. So, you mentioned how Germany has been transitioning in this way 20 years, I guess 10 years in terms of nuclear. A lot of the suggestions and changes you suggest are, to me, sounds a bit more longer term. If you look at creating more nuclear plants and everything like that, it's probably going to take 5-10 years. Are there any maybe shorter term solutions that could prevent that situation that you've been talking about, or is it?
I made it now clear that there are no other solutions, right?
Right.
I mean, we can first of all look. We can iterate more, but let's do one more iteration for you, so that no one thinks, hey, maybe the guy's anti-green. I'm all for it. I'd like to breathe the best air there is. Right? Switzerland's quite nice in that regard. So let's say wind. Okay. So wind, I personally, at my former employer called Babcock & Brown, a large private equity firm with 90 billion under assets under management. We had at the time in 2007 to 2008, we had, to my knowledge, the third largest wind development portfolio in the world. So we did a lot of wind. We looked at that. We looked at these assets. We loved them. We wanted to get them done. The thing is, it's hard. Why? Because no one wants wind in your backyard. In Germany, people hate it because a wind installation, a large one. Now, let's take it's a 3 megawatt installation. They look large, but they are actually fairly small. We can go offshore as far. The Netherlands just now installed a 15 megawatt thing. That's about, I don't know, 3 times the size of London Eye. So you can see the front. It's just gigantic. You can only do it offshore. Okay, so now let's take half that size, 7.5. That's a nice wind installation, right? A single installation. That thing does 2 things. Number one, it does, and it doesn't do so an hour a day. It does it 24 hours a day and not 365 days a year, as I just explained. But usually, I call it, we assumed in our business plans with about 310 days or 320 days, subject to, you know, the wind corridors that we identified and so on. There's, by the way, a very good London office that measures wind all over Europe, and it's the best guys. So you go to them and make sure, is that location going to work for it or not? And so, so you go there and, okay, you say, okay, let's do 330. That's max you can take in your business plan, right? But it does. No one wants it. It makes you nuts. That noise alone, because it's not as silent as that just did. And then the second thing it does, which people completely underestimate, is it does this, it throws a shed, right? Every time it moves, there is a light change behind it. And that's what makes people most crazy in my old employment experience. People just don't want it. Okay, so now you have to bring them offshore, which, by the way, is much better, because an offshore wind farm is about twice as productive as an onshore wind farm. It's just the wind corridors in Europe, they are clearly twice as good in along the North Sea in those corridors offshore than they are onshore, right? And that's why a wind farm offshore the UK should produce 38% efficiency factor, which is quite good, right? And a coal plant does 42. So you're almost as good as a coal plant, except that you're still intermittent. You cannot just, you know, get that base load when you need it. It's weather dependent. But okay, 38% on average for the year, quite nice. While an onshore farm, you know, bad location can easily plummet as low as 12, 13%. You know, let's say 16, 70% is probably what it's going to produce. But that's not very high. That's a lot of money for not that much electricity each year. Then you need to connect it to the grid. You know, you have lots of other costs that everyone likes to, you know, keep on the. Let's not talk about them, right? But you need them, right? And then in effect, if you really want to make it base load kind of power, you need now the storage that no one wants to talk about. By the way, if you need to transport it from Bremen offshore into Bavaria, now you need a transition line of, let's call it 6,000 kilometers. Who wants to talk about those costs? Oh no, let's not talk about them. That's too complex. You're unfair. Now suddenly our unit cost doesn't work when we are preached that all this wind is so cheap. But you see, if you really do the cost, there are a lot of what they love to call external cost for nuclear that are actually really on the solar side and on the wind side that everyone likes to keep aside. But anyway, let's do them. Let's have all the menu. I'm all for it, but we have to understand that renewables, also hydro, Switzerland is a hydro country, fantastic, right? But we need to understand that those are not going to work without, at the moment, nuclear on the side. So nuclear and RES, you know, renewable energy sources, they are joined. They should be joined at the hip. While we lack the chemical storage, I'm talking grid scale chemical storage. I'm not talking some battery here and there. I'm talking grid scale, 50 gigawatt hours or 15 gigawatt for Germany alone for 2 weeks that we can unload minute by minute, in order to keep that grid stable, or it all crashes, right? It's like nothing there, right? Germany has 58 megawatt installed chemical storage. We need 15 gigawatt hours for 2 weeks that can run, boom, out of, yeah, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen anytime soon. While Mr. Musk installs a battery that breaks down on the way to being installed, right? I mean, we're just early in that development, what I call technology readiness level. We're early in it, right? We are in what I call the testing phase of prototypes. So level 5. We want to build a plane, level 9. People, you and I, we go in with our families, our children, everyone is there, we feel safe, it's going to fly, it's going to land, everything is fine, and it's going to do that 1 million times without fail. So when people talk, they all talk in different languages and different meanings. What I mean is grid scale, reliability, security, making sure it all works. And what people love to tell is their own little story about, hey, but here it works, here it is this, here it is that. But if you then dig in and say, no, let's look at it from generation, timing, location perspective, then we all know it's not there. In Germany, look, I'll give you another one. I told you, NIMBY, people don't like the wind farm in the backyard. Let's talk something else. So how did Germany do in terms of getting those transition lines in? Because they know they need transition lines, right? They need to double the grid. It's in my thread. People can read up. Those documents are available. Everything is public. In now the 10th year of trying, they managed to get a third of the business plan done. A third. By having laws that give them permission to accelerate everything, to expropriate land of owners, to have kind of all the possibilities, tools within a democracy. We're not China, thank God, right? In order to unroll transmission lines from north to south in order to bring wind from the North Sea or from Bremen or Hamburg into Baden-Württemberg, Bavaria. And we don't have yet one single transmission line that can do that. We don't, after 10 years of trying.
Yeah.
So when people tell me about their plans, what I really want people to do is really to go about, and it's hard because, by the way, if you go on the web, everyone just wants to tell you the green fairy tale. It's literally as if there is an entire lobby out there that just tells you the great news about green. But you see, these people don't do themselves any service, because if we hit that blackout, no one wants to hear about this decarbonization anymore. While I'm all for it, we can do it, but we need to do it in a scientific way. And I want physicists, and I want engineers, electrical engineers to do it. And I don't want the politician that studied children books, or wrote children books, or some fanatic young lady that has steely blue eyes, but has absolutely zero idea about how a grid works, that just says, no, we need to be, wind and solar. I just don't want these people to build my plane. I want engineers to build that plane. And if they say, look, we're going to do this, and we're going to, by the way, do it quickly, right? But it, by the way, then takes 65 years. That's exactly how it should be. And just because someone stands up there and says, by the way, all that needs to happen by 2050, we all need to decarbonize. And by the way, nuclear, we don't want either anymore. They don't say that so specifically, but they do it, as you can see in Germany right now. Then I have to say this is going to get very bad. And the only thing I can say is, again, I hope for a small incident that is big enough to get everyone's attention. Now, you say the cost that we have in the grid at the moment gets everyone's attention. I'm not so sure. I think, yes, it will get everyone's attention, but politicians have a way to blame Putin. When I say Putin is half the story, guys, don't blame Putin. It's 30% of the problem we have. The other 2/3 are absolutely of our own making, and they all just come together at the moment. That's bad luck, but they do.
Yeah, which is very concerning. So, Alex, I think that's a great message to leave the listeners with. So, thank you so much for your time. We've mentioned your thread on Twitter, which is really good, and I recommend everyone read. Is that the best place people can find you on Twitter, or is there anywhere else
Yes,
people can?
I think look that I think that I think people want to probably digest what I just said and then carefully study it. And again, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or ask a question there. I'm happy, and that you'll probably find a lot of interaction on that thread. Anyway, it's about 80 tweets on that grid, and again, it's numbers, it's data.
Yeah, perfect. I'll put that in the description below so anyone can find it there. But Alex, thanks so much. I really enjoy that, but I am a bit concerned now.
No, again, it's not meant to concern, but it's just
Yeah.
we are where we are, and things don't resolve themselves.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe it's just I have little faith that the leadership will learn, but
And
we'll see.
prepare a little bit for the worst case, because if you're mentally prepared, I think it's half as bad. And then I think we also start to vote differently. After all, it's about educating the people, because they probably then will become a bit more critical with more people that actually have no engineering background, no nothing. They just stand there and say, we're going to do a green shift here. I
Yeah,
think voters should become a bit more critical. After all, we get the politicians we deserve.
yeah, definitely. So yeah, Alex, thanks again.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and click the bell icon so you are notified when new podcasts are released. I hope you're leaving with some great value about investing, trading, and finance. See you on the next show.